Welcome to Tapped In. We are back. We are live. It's been a minute, but we are here today with a really special episode. Our guest Nathan is going to share all of his many, not all the talents, because I'm sure you have so many, but we're going to get into talents and the journey of uncovering those. And, as we always go with our journeys of embodiment, creativity, and life after unraveling.
It's great to be here. Looking forward.
And now for our little group invocation, you are now tapped into the soft power frequency.
All right. Welcome. For those who are new here, I'm Siobhan. I am a birth witch, a intuitive guide, and founder of the Birth Realm, and co-host of Tapped In here with Midori.
And I am Midori. I am an artist alchemist. I am your friendly neighborhood witch. And yeah, I am really interested at the intersection of creativity and healing arts. And here we have Nathan. Nathan, he, they is a deep thinking, truth seeking empath, teacher, and artist who uses music as a medium through which he shares his soul and radiates his vibration, transcending himself and all those whom he reaches. In addition to his musical journey, Nathan has spent the past number of years identifying, deconstructing, and healing from the ways in which he has been conditioned and socialized by the systemic pillars of colonialism that are white supremacy, capitalism, patriarchy, imperialism, and Abrahamic religious conditioning. Through his will to change, Nathan is continually embodying new depths of growth and understanding, self-discovery, and exploration, and creative beauty. Welcome, Nathan, to the field, everyone.
Thank you. Really
Welcome.
happy.
Yeah, so Nathan just put it all right there in the bio. We're going to get into all those things, all the isms, all the systems, as we always do. But in this show, for those that are newer, we really come at it from the angle of what's possible and creativity. And so to hear that Nathan leads with just outright, these are the values and the systems we're smashing, while we enter into conversation about creativity and what you create and offer through this journey is really exciting. So the first question always on this show is, what are you celebrating?
What am I celebrating today? I am celebrating, you know what I'm celebrating? I'm celebrating the freedom of the schedule that I've been able to put together for myself. I've been on my freelance journey for 3 years now. It's been since leaving the institution, I guess you can call it. And we'll dig more into that later on. But I'm finally at the point where I've been kind of in the grind and in this flow of freelance life enough that I've been able to make connections with enough people, get some solid jobs that are really fulfilling for me, and that I really enjoy doing. I don't just go have to do them to make my money, but all of my work that I'm doing is stuff that I really enjoy, and I feel that I also have the freedom to put together my own schedule and to sorry, there's a siren. But I feel like I have a freedom to put together my own schedule and really live life on my own terms, especially comparing that to being in this capitalist grind and this capitalist society that we have, So I'm thankful for that. I'm celebrating that today.
Love. That's such a major celebration, and that's something we've actually talked on here a lot. So many of our guests have been people who are both striving toward that and people who already have it. And so I love that that's your celebration, because Same over here. Like, now that I'm so acclimated into my own schedule, honestly, I don't think I could ever go back. And every time I've entertained going back to like applying for a 9 to 5, like literally my body, and like anytime I do a reading for myself, my guides are like, you cannot handle that. You cannot handle you physically going back to that way of being. Like, you got to figure something else out because it's not happening. So I'm celebrating that too. And thanks for reminding me now that like
Yes.
this is the reality I live in. And it took, that's part of why we decided to share our journeys on here, is like, what is that actually like to upkeep a schedule like this? What are the sacrifices sometimes that we make to keep a schedule like that? And sometimes financially they're a lot. Like you said, we're in this world designed that you get rewarded for consenting to that scheduling. And sometimes it's tough, but at the same time, I love that we just get to vibe here on a Wednesday afternoon.
Yes.
Midori, what are you celebrating?
Yeah, I'll keep it in the same vein in that I think about all of my jobs and like, wow, it really did take me a while to get to this point where I can be like really claiming my gifts and claiming the value I bring to organizations and clients. And just recently, last week, I really claimed like, I only want to be available for my agency job 2 days a week. Like, I really want to invest the other 3 days of the week into what I'm building with soft power, into my own like business, and being able to like feel confident enough to be like, this is what I'm available. And I'm not actually, like, I'm not budging on that. I think is just like a growth of my confidence in what I have to offer. And like, yeah, acknowledging I actually do have a lot of like career experience to inform that sense of confidence. And I think that was before, like, I didn't have that growing into like post college. I was just kind of taking whatever I could get. So yeah, I'm really celebrating that sense of confidence that has only come from experience and life experience and maturity, and like actual dedication to like my lane. Yeah.
Midori, I love that you said that. I was talking to a friend last night. It's an artist friend of mine that actually lives in the same building that I live in. We got together and worked on a song, and we were just talking kind of about both of our freelance lives, that we have. And one of the things that I mentioned to them that has been such a positive result of my taking chances in the freelance life is that I've really had opportunities to get to know who I am, and to sit with myself, and to really, frankly, be able to get to the point where I can say, I know who I am. This is what I like to do. This is what I'm choosing to do with my life. And this is how I'm choosing to live it, and I'm living in my power because I am making those choices. They're not being dictated by some outside job or some outside types of systems. I'm doing as much as I can on my own terms. And it's so empowering.
I love that. So let's get into it, because you started to just say, like, now that you know who you are, what you like and what you can and won't tolerate, giving some background. We've gotten a little taste so far. And for those who are in the soft power community, they got to hear either your story more on your musical journey when we had our introductory event last week. And you're also a collaborator in the soft power choir, which, for those that are like following along in our community, had the first meeting on Monday. That was so amazing. If you don't know what we're talking about, make sure you get on our email list to find out about this new choir that Midori, Nathan, and Dr. Kiki have been collaborating on together, because we are newer in relationship. We met only just in the last couple months at most, huh, Midori? And so how Nathan entered into the soft power universe was through Dr. Kiki, and y'all did your master's programs together at Mizzou. You have this relationship, and as we've been talking about what space to hold, what to build, what are the things that we're healing through, always the voice comes up. And Tapped In is actually really a show born from this similar effort to free our voices and to get used to just being imperfectly witnessed and heard. And Midori and I started out in January just like feeling this push that we need to like get on and just be take the pressure off from like being on camera and speaking. And so this has kind of been a practice in that. Or actually, that could have started a year ago when we were on Twitch. And then January was really like, okay, now what are we talking about? Because we were talking about anything and everything before. It was getting wild a little bit. We're like, okay, let's get some focus in. And this journey this year, people have been witnessing us on, has led here to you entering in as one of our first collaborators with Soft Power. And so I don't know all of your story, and that's why I'm so excited to get into it. Because what I've heard so far is this journey of you being a trained musician, lifelong musician, and reaching, the prestigious, like I just hear USC doctorate program, and I'm like, whoa, and you choosing to leave that. And so our topic is around unraveling. Am I wrong to guess that that was like a catalyst for it, or where does that fit into your larger picture of your identity journey? Just give us some starting off point where we could follow along this journey from like really academic, institutionally celebrated musician to now freelance creative and like liberated artist.
Totally. What's interesting is that I realized that my decision to leave USC and to leave the doctorate program and to leave that the kind of life that guaranteed more security than the path that I am currently going down. That the security of like a steady salary and a place to work that's always going to be functioning, but one of the interesting things was that I realized that when I chose to leave, I was coming back to myself and who I had been all along. And that's kind of a great segue into my interests, my primary interests in music and the things that drew me to music when I was a kid. I have musical parents. My dad, so my biological dad, he was a musician as well. He's not really active in music now, but he used to play in a band, and I've seen photos of me when I was really young, like a baby, like before I could even really speak, sitting on his lap, like at a piano, and just with my fingers on the keys, and just being around sound and being around instruments and being around music. And I've seen photos of me with my mom doing the same thing. So I started playing piano. My mom, I remember when I was really, really young, probably 3 or 4, I would go watch my mom sit down at our little upright piano, and she'd play and she'd sing songs, and I'd just sit there and I'd just watch her. And I would be kind of mesmerized by the music that she was making and just the act of her playing piano. And then eventually I would like get up on the bench and like sit by her and then maybe punk some notes out. And when I was 4, I started just playing things by ear. I remember like the very first song that I remember learning by ear and playing by ear, of all things, it was the Star Spangled Banner. It was the national anthem. So I remember sitting at the piano and just plucking out the melody to it and playing the melody to it. And that was kind of the beginning of my journey of using my ear to just learn things on my own and teach teach myself various aspects of music. I love to sing. I've always loved singing. I've sung in choirs since I was in elementary school. Um, I mentioned this on I think on our launch event call, that one of my best friends growing up, his mom was the choir director throughout school. So, and she was like a second mom to me. So I always had someone who's very nurturing in terms of fostering a safe space for us to sing, which I think is so important. And I think that's one of the goals for Kiki and myself with Soft Power Choir, is to really reclaim a space of safety and a space of security and a love-based space where people can feel free to share their voice in whatever way feels comfortable to them. And I'm very lucky that I had that um, from childhood. So I sang in choirs my whole life, from elementary school to junior high to high school. And then while I was also singing in choirs, I was also playing piano. I didn't start playing guitar until later in high school. Piano was my primary instrument, and I took piano lessons from a young age. I started at, I think, 5 years old. Yeah, I started playing by ear at 4, and then I started lessons at 5. And I took lessons all the way through my junior year of high school. Didn't take them my senior year of high school because I actually quit piano lessons to focus on playing sports. Because at one point in my life, I thought I wanted to, like, my dream. This is so funny to think about. My dream was to be a college athlete. Both of my parents, my mom and my adoptive dad, who came into my life when I was 3 years old, they also were big sports fans and loved sports. So I grew up playing sports all while playing music as well. I played baseball, I played football, played basketball, played golf. I was a pretty decent athlete. I actually had some offers to play baseball and football at smaller schools, like that's like Division III schools. But my time playing sports was it was really fun. I loved playing sports. It was also great for me um, to practice leadership skills, because I always I was telling my roommate the other day, we were just reminiscing about playing football at recess, and I was the kid that I always wanted to be the quarterback, and I always wanted to help my teammates, and I always wanted to help them get better at whatever it is that they were doing, and that kind of carried into the mentalities that I have with music teaching, because I just love helping people. Like, one of the core aspects of who I am, I've realized, is that I love helping people get better at something that they love. And for me, the main vehicle through which I do that is music. Because that's my gift, and that's, I think, one of the best ways that I can contribute.
So Leo, I know Midori's thinking about the astrology right now. I'm reading your mind.
Oh.
They say that well, she told me that you and I have really similar charts. I haven't seen your chart, but I know that that's something I've learned, especially like ninth house Leo, is like really seeing people's gifts and like really wanting to help them like activate it. Like for me, it was always like I would like cry watching people like perform, even if or like do whatever they love. I would feel so like emotionally invested, even if I had no idea what they're doing. I'm just like, they're doing their thing.
Yeah, it's so beautiful to witness.
I feel like the Leo thing that's so prevalent is like y'all love the spotlight, but y'all also just see people and hype people up so much. Like,
it's real.
And that's like what makes you magnetic, is because I mean, I can say that about both of you. You both know how to like not even compliment people, but just like hype people up. Like, you know exactly what to say at the right moment, and just help people feel really seen, because y'all actually desire that too. Y'all need to feel like that's the nourishment of being seen and witnessed in your like star qualities.
I love that you said that.
So it sounds like you really were supported in your voice and like had a lot of opportunities and took a lot of opportunities to lead. And so I'm really curious about is how on that trajectory, when did it turn to getting like either steering away from who you were, or this like idea of becoming closer to yourself? Because it sounds like young, like you were so multi-talented and taking leadership roles and active and kind of supported in some ways. Where has that story like twisted and turned to bring you to where you're at now, as far as like, I'm out of these institutions, I don't give a fuck about their approval, I got this?
Yeah. I what's an interesting thing that I've thought about so much, is that I never really truly, growing up, I didn't like classical music. I loved pop music, I loved rock music, I loved various forms of popular music, and that's the music that I was always playing. I took 1 year of like actual classical music lessons, classical piano lessons in high school, and like I learned to like some of the music, but I didn't really start liking like Western classical music until I went to college. And I bring that up because when you were asking about like the twists and turns on the path, Siobhan, I think a huge part of that is me, when I left the institution, coming back to the forms of music, the genres of music, the styles of music that I really always just loved in the first place. Because when I was a kid, I was learning pop songs like by ear and teaching myself chord progressions, and that was fun for me. Like what I would do with so many of the bands that I loved, like in high school, and I was in a band, and I did this with my band. Like when we would do covers, I'd look up the lyrics to a song that I liked and a song that I wanted to learn, and then I would sit at the piano and just listen to the track over and over and figure out like how to play it, essentially, like from the chords of the chord structure of the song to like various licks and various hooks and like how the song was played. And that is the kind of music making that like I always loved doing from the beginning, as opposed to, this is a Beethoven sonata, you have to study it this way, and this is how you learn it, and this is how you perform it, type of thing. I was always more rogue, I guess you could say. I've always liked doing things my way, and I've run into challenging situations. I can be stubborn. I can be pretty bullheaded. Sometimes that's something that I have learned to quiet during my healing and my growth process, and learn how to harness that part of me for good things and not let it prevent me from having good experiences. But when I went to college, I originally, this is undergrad, because I went to 3 different colleges. When I went to undergrad, I originally wanted to go into music business. And the reason that I wanted to do that was in music business, specifically from like a studio engineer. Like I wanted to work in a recording studio. And the reason for that is because when I was in high school, I was in a band, and we were able to get some money together, and we got some studio time, you know? And that was my first, especially me I'm from a little small town in Iowa of like 3,000 people. It's not like there are recording studios all over the place. So it was a big deal. It was a big deal. And I remember being in the studio and just throughout the recording process, through the mixing process, talking to the sound engineer that we were working with, I was like, this is so cool. And like, we're making an album, you know? And I was just like, this is what I want to do. I'm doing it. So when I went to college, I tried to create that experience but I wasn't totally able to, because most music programs, especially undergraduate music programs throughout the United States, they're focused on Western classical music. They're not focused on popular music and rock music. There are jazz programs more consistently, but like specifically like pop and rock type of programs, they don't offer those. And they really didn't offer those 10 years ago now. when I was an undergrad. So I had to create my own major. So I created my own double major in music and in business. And I was going to have to do independent studies to do like sound engineering courses and stuff like that. And essentially what happened was I was studying classical music and taking all the music history, Western music history, Western music theory, and doing those things. And I enjoyed them because I was getting better at music and I was practicing music, because that's the main reason I went to school in the first place. And that's the only reason, frankly, that I ever wanted to go to college for music, was just so I could take lessons, I can learn more about music theory, so that I could essentially just do my own thing with a greater vocabulary of skills and a greater vocabulary of sounds. That was deep down at its core. That's why I went to music school. I never went to music school to get a job. I didn't go to music school to be a teacher. I didn't go to music school to be a classical performer or learn about classical music. I went because I wanted to learn skills that would help me be a better musician just in my own way. And really reflecting on that, it makes sense why I'm here today, because as I continue to go through the various stages of my academic life, from undergrad to master's degree to doctorate degree, there was a time when I was really enjoying the classical music stuff and the conducting stuff, but it was never what I originally wanted to do. And honestly, the main reason that I went down the conducting side and the choral side was because I had an oh shit moment when I was going into my master's degree. Because I ended up dropping my business major side in my undergrad because I didn't want to take accounting. I didn't want to take marketing. I just didn't like it. I almost failed econ. Like, I'm just like, I don't care about this. And then I just ended up getting a general music degree. I was writing a lot of music, doing a lot. I was like the king of independent studies. I was doing so many things just kind of unique and on my own, like extra music theory stuff, doing extra jazz studies, doing extra piano and composing stuff, just kind of doing my own thing. And then I knew I wanted to stay in school because I wanted to keep learning. And I applied for master's programs in whatever I thought I could get accepted in, frankly. So I'm like, I've been writing a lot of music. I like to create music. So I'm going to apply for a master's degree in composition. So I put together a portfolio. I sent it off, got some auditions, got accepted to the University of Missouri. But then when I got to the University of Missouri, like the week before classes started, when all the because I was a TA as well. And that's the reason why I went to Mizzou, is because my schooling was paid for. Because I was a teaching assistant, but I was also going to do my master's degree. And I got down there, and it's like a week before classes start, and I realized that I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this program. And I'm like, oh shit, what am I going to do? Like, I moved down here, I uprooted my life, and I moved to this place. Like, what am I going to do? So I did some deep thinking, and I'm like, can I switch programs? Like, switch master's majors, maybe? And I talked to my mom, talked to a couple close friends, talked to a couple mentors, and I decided to give choral conducting a try. But all through my undergrad, I never had any intention of being a conductor or being a teacher. Ooh, let me plug in my computer. 1 second. The battery's low. But yeah, I never had any intention of being like a choral conductor or a teacher, because I always associated teaching with high school teaching, especially growing up in a little small rural area where I grew up. I was like, I don't want to do classroom management. I want to make music. So, and like, no shade at all to high school teachers, but I think it is a reality, especially high school music teachers, that there is an element of classroom management that has to take place, in secondary educational spaces. And I didn't want to do that. I always just wanted to be a musician.
You could tell the teachers who don't want to do it either that are there.
Exactly. And I didn't want to
be trash at engaging with students in that way.
Right. And I'm really glad that you said that, because I didn't want to do that to myself, and I didn't want to do that with kids, with students. I'm like, I knew even back then that I'm like, if I'm going to work with kids, I want to do it in an environment that's fruitful to me, so that I can create an experience that's fruitful to them as well. So I chose to not go down that route. So anyway, I get to Mizzou, and I decided on a whim to apply to change my master's degree program. So I went and talked to the head of the choir department at Mizzou and told him about my background, my experience. He was like, he handed me some music, and he's like, study this music, come back tomorrow and conduct it for me, and let's talk. So I did, and it went well. The meeting within the next day, and he accepted me into the program. So I filed the paperwork, and I changed my master's degree emphasis that next day. And that kind of started my choral conducting journey. And I've always loved choral music, and I always had interest in conducting. And I think, especially because it was just new and it was exciting, and I had classmates / colleagues that became brothers. You know, the community that I had during my master's degree was we were so close, and we still are. And it was a beautiful community. Like we loved and cared about each other, and there was a healthy type of competition. It was never any of us putting each other down or trying to necessarily be better than each other, but we were always lifting each other up, and just we were studying together, and in ways it was kind of like a second undergrad. Because I know that that a lot of people go into master's degree programs, and maybe it's more of like they're more by themselves, you know, they're just there to get the degree and do the coursework or whatever. But the camaraderie that I had during my master's degree was incredible. And we were so tight. And that's one of the reasons I think why I really took to the stuff that I was studying as much as I did. And it was new and it was exciting. And so I finished the master's degree, and I'm like, I want to keep going with this. So I applied for doctorate degree programs, and USC was my dream school, and I got an audition there, and I got accepted. And my experience at USC, though, it was a lot different. And I'll put a pause in that. I can keep going, but if there's any questions that you have or things you want to talk about, I'd love to just put a pause in my story and give you a chance to ask that if you have anything, because I can talk. Or I can just keep going.
Yeah, Midori, we haven't heard from you.
I know. I think for me, it's like so fascinating to hear from someone who like has such a formal education, you know, in the arts, and like see that we still kind of ended up in the same place. Like, I think that's fascinating to me, just from kind of like a philosophical standpoint of like, wow, like, you know, there was this level of encouragement when you're younger to be an artist, or at least just like have a more, I think, like encouraging view of having like an art and creative practice that, you know, and there's like some level of like nourishment there. Cause I think there's within kind of like marginalized communities, there's like people who have been nourished in that and even probably experienced some sort of harm in the institution anyways, and then people who like literally didn't think that was an option. And that's like my cohort of people who was like, I didn't even know that being an artist like was a thing. So I'm so curious about like your experience leading to you now kind of like creating this very like, you're creating world building. Like we can bring it back to world building. Like you really built your own ecosystem of your own world, and how you orient towards music that just feels so much more free is kind of what I'm getting at. Like you were like thrown so many different like frameworks and like histories of and like modalities of like expression, and you kind of like still created your own, but that is still very informed by like this sort of formal training, which I think is really cool. And what you bring to our space is like, not only do you have this very like magical, channeled, spirit-led relationship with music, but you also have the actual like hard skills of like, I can improvise, like I can go into Logic and pump out a song, and like, and it just is so second nature to you. And I think that's like what you bring, is like the merging of like actual like practical skill and like experience, and the like channeled, like spirit-led, intuitive piece. So I don't know if that's like, there's something there that you would want to speak on, but I think that's so fascinating. I think it's so cool for people to see that, you know, that side of soft power as a collective.
Thank you for saying that. Thank you for saying that. Yeah, I can absolutely speak on that. In it, you know, what's interesting is that it kind of is, I can kind of segue back to where I was like at USC, like in the telling of my path. When I was in school at all 3 degrees, and this is, I've always just kind of been this way. I've always taken a lot of pride in whatever it is that I'm working on, whatever it is that I'm studying, whatever it is that I'm learning, whatever stage in my life it's been. Like, I work really hard at it. Early on, I would be motivated to be better than myself, but I would also, this is pre numerous ego deaths. I would also have an insecurity that I want to try to be better than other people and project that. So a full disclaimer, I own up to that. And it's taken a lot of work and deconstruction to get to a different place, than that. But throughout all my time in school, I loved learning, and I worked really hard at whatever it is that I was learning and being taught at the time, and all those classes that I took. And I think that is one of the things that makes me, one of the things that makes me, because I'm not, I don't regret my path at all. I don't regret my path at all, because frankly, I had to go through something and realize that that's what I didn't want to do, to figure out what I actually wanted to do. And that, I think that's a really, really powerful life lesson, even in and of itself. Because all of the structures, you know, the institutions and the rules and the regulations and the expectations of these kinds of spaces, even though I don't fuck with it now, and like it's not like the kind of things that I want to be in, and the kind of places and environments I want to work with, I'm glad that I was in those places and had those experiences, because there were skills that I developed in ways of going about studying something or learning something, or having the discipline to really work on something that I care about, and have in learning that discipline. And not only does it come from music and academia, but I'm going to bring it back to sports. My time in athletics growing up, like this is kind of a fun story to share. I was more of a chunkier, slow kid, like playing sports, like growing up, and like I wasn't one of the fast kids. I couldn't really jump super high, and like I had friends that were really good athletes, and like right around 5th or 6th grade, I started to get a growth spurt, and my body started to change a little bit. And I was also like, every single sprint that we had to do in basketball or football, like I was running my hardest. I didn't care how tired it made me. I was running my hardest because I wanted to be as fast as the other fast kids. And it was kind of that. So I've always had that concept of, I'm really going to push myself. And that was an important life lesson in athletics. And I did end up like becoming a better athlete. I did get faster, and like I could compete with the other kids. And I was really proud of that. And I think those lessons of discipline, and those lessons of being able to focus on something that you really want in your life, I absolutely carry those with me into the kind of work that I'm doing now that's really really me, you know. So my time at USC was interesting. Right when I started, the energy was off, frankly, because at my audition, this is so interesting to think about. At my audition, I was sitting in on a number of classes as well that day, and I had a chip on my shoulder because I was scared, and I just wanted to get accepted so badly that I thought I had to prove myself. And I remember sitting in on a class. It was a conducting class, and there was this master student who was basically, I was a master student at the time because I was a master student auditioning for a doctoral program, you know. And there was a master student at USC, and he was up there. It was a conducting class, and he was conducting his song, conducting his piece, and he didn't really know the music very well. And I didn't know this person. His life situation could be anything I don't know about it. But when the time came to give comments to him, I was so triggered that he didn't know the music, and it was something that I knew. And I was like, how can he be a part of this prestigious school that I'm auditioning for, and that I'm killing myself to try to get into this program, and he doesn't even know the music, the professors don't even care. I had this big chip on my shoulder, and I raised my hand and I said, it looks like you don't even know the music. And the professors noticed that, and I was I was so defensive, you know, because I'm like, I've worked so hard to get here, and I'm trying to get into the school, and there are students at your school that are representative of your program that like don't even know your music, and you're just letting it slide. And it made me really upset, frankly. It made me really upset. And the professors noticed that, and it caused them to question my character a lot, understandably. And so between that and some of the interviews that I had with the faculty, they ended up accepting me to the program, but not without a conversation with me first, specifically from the head of the department. And the head of the department, he called me on the phone, and he told me I wanted to make sure that I'm not accepting an asshole into my program. And he said that to me, and it shattered me. It tore me into a million pieces because I just wanted so badly to be a part of this program that I was at the point of I felt like I was really misunderstood, but it also caused me to really evaluate my actions, and to begin to have one of those many ego deaths. You know what I mean? So I felt like from the very beginning of my time at USC, I was walking around with my tail between my legs. Like I had to be on the right behavior. I had to say the right things. I had to act the right way, you know. So I was literally talking to my roommate about this before we hopped on this call. Throughout my time at USC, there was a part of me that was always just living in a state of fear. And that absolutely took a toll on me, you know, during my time in the program. I worked so hard, and I learned a lot, and I did very well. And I grew a lot. But the more that I not only did doctoral coursework, but the more that I saw kind of a behind the scenes look at what my career would be like to be a college professor and to be in academia, the more I realized that this is just not what I want to do. And I got so burned out. From the workload, the intensity, also the combo of those things with me not really wanting to do that at my core, you know. That's why by the time I got to my third year at USC, I was just ready to be done. And I knew that it was really taking a toll on me because I wasn't just ready to be done with school. I was really burned out of music. I didn't want to listen to music. I didn't want to play music. And it's wild to think about that now because like now I'm in a healthy space again. And but at that time, I was really burned out. I was really burned out. And I had to take a break. I had to step away and not play any music, not listen to music for a number of months. And I got a job at a sushi restaurant, worked at a hand roll bar for a while, and slowly began my recovery of loving music again. But my experience, all that to say, my experience at USC, it was a complex one. Those were tough years for me. They were grueling years for me, but they were absolutely growing years in a number of ways.
Thank you for sharing all that, Nathan. It sounds like such a journey. And what's on my mind as you're sharing about this is really like it sounds like you exited because it was keeping you from the music. But from the front end, from you, what I've really heard you most speak on consistently is about the harm of these systems. So, where did it turn for you where your understanding of this sensation that this place wasn't right? When did that turn into applying this knowledge of why it wasn't right? How did you enter into learning? Because you went through this whole traditional system and like you felt it was off. I'm just focused on the music. I'm focused on how I want to do things and the art and creating. When did that flip into like, oh, this system, like when did you start learning about that stuff? When did that really hit home for you? And how did that feel when you learned the history and you kind of pieced together why like somatically this institutional journey was so like disruptive for you?
It was during it really started during my second year at USC, because that I didn't have a teaching assistantship my first year. I was just I had a scholarship, but I was still paying USC some money. My second year, I was able to get a teaching assistantship, which gave me a tuition waiver, gave me health insurance, a living stipend, and in turn, my teaching assistantship position was to be the assistant to the head of my department, and this is the same person that I had the phone call with, at the very beginning that I was telling you about, that really caused that led to the tail between my legs, fear-based kind of mindset. He's frankly, he's a world-renowned teacher and clinician and figure in the choral world, the choir world. He's had a really long, successful career. Success can be defined in a number of different ways. I'm just going to say he's had a long, successful career. There were moments. There were moments, numerous moments, where let me say this. I'm going to say this instead. Having that specific position for him was very grueling. It wore me down. It was really intense because the expectations were really, really high for him and what he wanted and with his group. The work was also very sporadic, and kind of all over the place. And like what we might have talked about on previous calls, like I'm the kind of person like compartmentalization is helpful for me. So just the sporadic nature of just all of the information that I was trying to juggle, it really, really, really wore me down. And there came a time, it was the end of the first semester, my second year, when we were having like our end of the semester meeting. And he starts talking to me about working for him the following year. And we keep in mind we signed 1-year contracts. So I was not aware that I would be working for him the next year. And he starts talking to me about next year. And I said, whoa, 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 whoa. I want to let you know that I'm not intending to reapply for this position. And he goes, oh. And then we don't talk about it. When I get back the next semester, we have our meeting before the semester starts. And he goes, about what you said, I'm not going to accept you for a TA for any other position than working for me. So he was essentially like waving my scholarship like in front of me and saying, you either work for me or we don't pay you. And that was one of those moments when I was just like, this is fucked up. This is fucked up. That was a big catalyst for me. And we ended up having a couple conversations down the road, and he took back his statement. And I ended up having a meeting with him in which there were a lot of things that was said on both sides. A lot of things that was said. And that was kind of the beginning of my unraveling, of just really taking a step back and looking at what the politics are in these institutions, which then caused me to reflect and really think even more deeply about the ways that things are taught, the mentalities of some of these teachers, which then led me to look bigger picture and think and connect various isms, various systems of this colonial project, that we talk about so much in soft power. And I started to make connections. And then when 2020 hit, that was a huge awakening for me with everything that came with that year. The Floyd protests having a really, really big impact on me. And it was then that I really started to put puzzle pieces together that had been floating around in my mind and in my experience. Reflecting on things like I said on the launch call, reflecting on the kinds of music that's focused, that these programs focus on, the proportion of white male composers to all other people, and the over prioritization of that, the over prioritization of music by dead white European men, to the persona of the conductor that is taught consciously and subconsciously in these systems and in these programs, and the things that it molds people to be. Things just continue to become even more and more apparent to me the more unlearning that I was doing within myself, the more I was able to see in those programs the very things that I was unlearning and going through the process of unlearning.
When did that turn spiritual for you? Because I imagine that growing up in your path, especially knowing, like you said, you grew up in a small rural town, and I know my understanding of a lot of this is that a lot of this music stuff is happening in the church. Did you grow up in the church? Because I know you now work in the First Unitarian, or you're the music director, right, at the UU of LA. And correct me on like the titles. I know there's like all these nuances, but what I would love to hear is like, you felt this call, you felt this pull to music. There was this huge situation that went down while you were at USC. When did it turn? How was spirit present in your life through this musical journey? And I am just guessing that started to connect these two issues. I know you've been digging into your own ancestry and indigenous like land frameworks. And so I'd love to hear like, what has your spiritual journey been like alongside that?
I was raised in the Methodist church. There was a little Methodist church that was a block away from from my house growing up in my little town. My adoptive dad, he really just doesn't. He's not religious or spiritual. He just doesn't really care, and he's not connected in that way, and really never has been, at least as far as I've known. My mom is a Christian. She took a break from going to church and being involved in church early in my life. And then when I was probably third or fourth grade, I think I was in fourth grade. That's when my mom suggested that I start to go to church with her and go to Sunday school. And I'm like, okay, because my friends were there, some of them, so I went. I ended up going through Sunday school all the years, all through high school. I was the president of the church youth group. I got confirmed in the church. This is so interesting because Kiki and I have had a number of conversations about this. And I always felt like I had to try to convince myself of Christianity, and I had to convince myself that it was real. It just didn't connect. It never connected with me. I always felt like I was faking it.
Did it feel like it was connected into your musical life or not really? Because I know some people say like, yeah, the place where I sang, the place where I make music was always the church. Was that your experience?
Yes and no. I'm so glad that you asked me this because this is really, really important. And actually this ties into soft power choir and just soft power in general. I realized this in high school, but then especially in my undergrad, singing with my undergraduate choir, which was an incredible experience. I could have a whole hour session about just talking about that. But one of the things that I realized was that I always felt the closest to God or source or whatever one wants to call it. I always felt the closest to tapping into that type of space, that type of being, that type of connection, that vibration when I was singing in choirs with other people. That was the closest that I always felt. And Kiki and I have talked about this before, and I think it was a number of factors for me. It was the combination of all the harmonies that we were making. It was the vibration, of the resonance and the frequency that was literally taking place because of sound that we were creating. It was being in a safe, comfortable space with people that I love and people that I care about, and people that were all singing, people who were all singing about a shared message. It was feeling the amazing connectedness with the director that I loved and respected, who was able to not only talk about the music but find ways for the music to connect with our lives and ignite conversations, to do all those things. So there were moments when the closest that I had ever felt to God, whatever that means to anyone, the closest I'd ever felt to God was when I was singing in choirs with people. And so that is despite me not connecting with Christianity throughout high school and in my undergrad, it was off and on, master's degree kind of off and on, but I was always faking it, frankly. And then at USC, I considered myself agnostic. I believed, but I didn't know what. And agnostic was really just a word for me not taking initiative to exploring spirituality. My spiritual journey, I began kind of late, honestly. I would say I really started my journey with decolonized spiritual practices and learning about it, frankly, just about a year ago. And I think a result of that, a catalyst for that, is because I had been so deep in activist spaces and thinking about the world from that lens that it just developed such a deep sense of nihilism within myself. And it screams to me now. It makes so much sense because I think there are a lot of deco- we talked about this on a previous call, I remember. Decolonization without the spiritual connection is really just colonialized type of activism, I think, because you can't separate decolonial work and anti-racist work or anti-capitalist when these are all pillars of the colonial project, right? You know, they're all subsets of this huge overarching umbrella of what it is. And one of the goals of colonialism, at least in my eyes, is to remove the concept of indigenous spiritual practices from from the indigenous peoples, but also to let the people that they were conditioning, the non-indigenous people, to prevent them from even knowing what it is. So all of that to say, my spiritual journey really started about a year ago when as a response to the nihilism that I was feeling from not having any connection to spirit and trying to be involved in activist work.
I love that. And I wouldn't even, I think this leg of your spiritual journey started a year ago because to me, it just sounds like, from you sharing that you were singing and playing instruments from childhood, to me, that's like you were following your spirit where it was led and meeting yourself where you were at and still being so connected. And I think that honesty, that maybe the more intentional, like decolonial indigenous lens only began a year ago. I think that's so helpful for people watching or listening to hear that you're not late on your spiritual awakening. There's just layers and layers to go. And like this life is so much about like discovering our human, like what is the meaning of life? And I feel like it just it makes sense that you're exactly on time for where you are at and that you've been tapped in for so long from the music you've been creating. To me, there's no doubt that you've been channeling your whole life. Like you've been following where you've been pulled. And so, yeah, I always say, well, I weigh between two beliefs. One, that atheism is a psyop, and the other is just that atheism is like a trauma response for based on all these things that happen. And I fully 100% agree with you. And that's my favorite conversation to have, is the place of spirit in political movements, in revolutionary spaces. Because if colonialism was carried out through the church, how can we totally avoid that fact while trying to get out of it? And I just see it as like the biggest block on the left for our ability to organize and to connect, is continuing that illusion of separation from each other, from the earth. So I love it.
Oh, man.
Yeah, Nathan, you're definitely accessing a trance state. Like, if y'all can go to Nathan's TikTok, which we'll put in the description, but it's very clear that like it literally just like looks like your crown is open and you're just like, it's such a somatic sensorial experience to witness you play music, and because I feel the like resonance, and literally it feels like the energy is like moving through you. And I think it's such a like interesting verbiage to think about, like the concept of a conductor being this like energy, a conduit for energy. And thinking about like within astrology, my mind goes to the 11th house of like what church experiences are, the spiritual community, the broader like, it's not these like really close one-on-one experiences. It's like what happens when we enter into a collective space where we feel spiritual belonging, where we feel interconnected with the world, with each other, that doesn't need these like intense, like intimate, like, one-on-one, like deep, deep, deep intimacy. It's just like, can I see you and see your humanity and see how we are like connected without at just like at like the touch point, I think that's like what singing in this choir, soft power choir, is opening up, is like we have this opportunity to create these spaces, this space of belonging, even virtually, and like what that feels like. I think that's like, so I'm fascinated by like the virtual component of the choir, that we can create. Like, this is a field, and we've always said like energy is like, literally we're energy beings. So not only do we not need, like, it would be great if we could be in the same space, but it still can be translated to the virtual space, because that's really all going back to even like the Reiki experiences that we facilitate, or that you facilitate, Siobhan. Like, that can be transferred remotely, you know, and that creates this kind of connection with the unseen. Like, it's real. And I'm seeing all these like connections, and it's so beautiful.
Yeah, one thing I think, as we've been sharing the soft power message, that I'm feeling strongly is this idea that spirit and spirituality is really acknowledgement of your life force. Like, people who are total materialists, who totally don't believe in God or any, collective consciousness, can agree there's a million sci-fi movies about what's a sentient versus non-sentient being. What could robots, like, are robots conscious? And like, this has been how many themes of exploration in fiction, that to me it's so incredible that all of that comes down to the fact that we agree here that there's nothing that could be replicated about the human spirit. And so if people scientifically can understand that, to then, just see the subtle body, as we call it in like Reiki and energy work, the energetic body, this subtle field that people experience and see all the time. People who see, what is it called? Is it synesthesia?
Yes.
When they see the colors in music, people who can see auras. We all have this. It's just an acknowledgement that like, this is the animating force behind it all. And I wish we could separate that conversation more frequently from this concept of deities. And Midori said she wanted to bring this up with you on here today, which we're talking about Jesus. And so Netflix just dropped this movie, The Jesus Revolution, which looks at like this movement down in SoCal of these hippies who turned to Jesus. And I was just really thinking about Jesus as one of many deities. And this thing that cuts people off from spirit so often, and that, again, back to colonialism, was saying that it was all limited and credited to this one deity, Jesus Christ. And how, like, I just want everybody who, if you're watching now and you're like, what is soft power? What do they believe in when they're always talking about spirit? Like, we believe in the energy and the life force. And I'm sure that comes also from our like Pan-Asian background. All the co-founders come from, that is more of like a Eastern indigenous like approach of the life force, and that we're assigning meaning when we put this energy into one figure. Midori was talking about this yesterday, of seeing like these goddesses, that the goddesses are really embodiments of the energy that we all possess, and us channeling it all toward one figure and symbol that can be up and like just something we can point to materially, because that's human, is like we're trying to put some like material understanding behind it all. But I really want to hear, Nathan, your relationship, like now where you've grown with indigenous values. I only came back to like even entertaining Jesus in that conversation in the past year, because there's a long time where I couldn't talk about it, and I was just like, oh my God, like, the trauma of what that all represented in my life up to then. What do you vibe with? What, if you had to just share right now what you want to let us in on, as far as your spiritual journey? Are there deities that resonate for you, that you felt like consistent presence in your life? What has that, or are you just like, I'm fully about the land and connecting with the spirits of the land? I want to hear more about what this journey is like for you, as a new kind of like fresh open eyes on your spiritual journey the past year.
There hasn't been a specific deity or deity type of figure throughout my life that I've connected with, resonated with. So I'll say that right out of the gate. Where I'm at now, to me, Christ is, I do not think Jesus was a real person, but I think Christ as a consciousness is real. Christ being a level of consciousness, Christ being a vibration that we can ascend to. Frank, I love what you were saying about earlier about how in so many indigenous spiritual traditions throughout the world, at least from where I'm at, and I'm not saying like this like I'm an authority or anything like that, because I'm not, but from what I've been learning recently, is I've noticed patterns throughout a number of various indigenous spiritual traditions throughout the world, that they have these deities that represent a way of being, or represent certain strengths, or represent certain aspects of one's life, that they can seek out this deity. And like with what you were saying, Siobhan, they can seek out this deity to help them heal and fulfill a lack within themselves that they might be feeling. And I've been doing a lot of reading into African spirituality as of late. And what's fascinating to me is that throughout numerous African spiritual traditions, especially when considering how massive Africa is and how people in various parts of Africa, they have their own traditions, but there are common aspects of each tradition that seem to have similarities. Because in all of these traditions, there are shamans, there are mediums, there are healers, there are ways in which they connect with higher levels of consciousness. There are ways that they connect to spirit and either see spirit, talk to spirit, feel spirit, and these things, and it's not unique to any specific thing, you know. And I think the commonality in the fact that these concepts are present in indigenous spiritual traditions all over the world, that's something that really can't be denied. And it's something that, as opposed to, ooh, this is big. I think comparing the concepts of indigenous spirituality and indigenous spiritual practices to newer religions, because I think spirituality and religion is different. Religion for me is a system that is designed with certain deities that people are told to worship, with certain rules that people are told to follow. I think that specifically Abrahamic religions, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, in their own ways, are tools that embody aspects of the colonial project. They are tools that are used to subdue and to control and to condition people into behaving in certain ways that fit the agenda of the overarching colonial project and fit the agenda of various systems, patriarchal systems, white supremacist systems, capitalist systems, imperialist systems. I think that these religions, while there are truths in them, because these religions are influenced from indigenous spiritual concepts. There are so many sources that one can find and seek out and read, and then put puzzle pieces together to learn that the concepts of religion, like for example, the Ten Commandments. The Ten Commandments are based in the 42 laws of Ma'at, which is ancient Kemetic, ancient Egyptian laws of how to live your life. But one of the most interesting things that I've learned is that they changed the wording. They took 10 of these 42 rules and they changed the wording from I am, I shall, keeping it focused on the individual with the laws of Ma'at, to the 10 Commandments, thou shalt, you will. So it's telling them what they are supposed to do, and taking the power away from the self and having it come from a higher outside singular omnipotent being, as opposed to these ancient Kemetic principles when they weren't worshiping these various gods. These gods, like with what you were saying, Siobhan, these gods are concepts, they're metaphors and representations, aspects of the self that one can seek out to heal and to fulfill a lack that they might be feeling within themselves. And I think that's, for me, that's where I'm at. And that's why I resonate, that's why I resonate so much deeper with spiritual practices as opposed to religion. And I think that's one of the reasons, oh my goodness, I think that's one of the reasons why religion never resonated with me, is because from growing up, I have had trauma and issues with authoritative figures. And I think the concepts of religion coming from
Welcome to the club, babe. We all Saturn and Aquarius.
Woo! The concept of religion, of these, especially these Abrahamic religions that have a singular, omnipresent, judgmental, jealous God. Okay, first
Punitive.
off, yes,
Punitive, yeah.
yes, and it's such a glaring like contradiction to me, because like if this God is all powerful and all knowing, wouldn't this God have the emotional maturity to be grounded enough and secure enough in the self to not be a jealous, judgmental God? Like,
yeah, it's just, I feel like to anybody who, and this probably is also connected to being neurodivergent, when we have the ability to connect patterns of logic based on subtle cues and nuances, immediately it's like, it's not calculating. Like this just is not adding up. Am I tripping here? Like this logically, the equation is not really working out here. Like, hold on a second.
Mathing.
And that's it. And that's me. I was like stunned. I was like, hold on. Can we slow down?
Yeah.
Because like if this piece of the algorithm is off in my brain, I can't really meet
Literally.
you wherever you're headed. The bullshit meter is just like ringing, like bullshit. Like no.
Yeah, literally.
No.
Like,
and if the answer is just like
gonna enter my
this
brain,
book said so, I was from a young age just like, okay, who wrote the book? Who did the, like, oh, because they said so. I'm like, okay, and who are they? Like, who are they to me?
Yo, I've heard that so much from elders of the boomer generation. They say. And
Who
I'm
is
like,
they?
who is they? The magazine, like whatever, the fitness magazine you read that's backed by,
That's a really fascinating aspect, I think, looking at generations where information, like there's like boomer generation where it's the idea of wondering where a source came from is why, they've been so susceptible to scams and election like things, because it's like this lack of questioning. Whereas you talk to like Gen Z, who's just like, no, you don't believe just a random thing on the internet. You need to do the lateral searches of where can I track this back to. And I think that is another piece of why, to me, spirit and connection to intuition is the most important thing right now, is because it's so muddled that it's getting so like, even our eyes are going to deceive us now. Age of Aquarius with AI, you're watching an interview. Is that really that person talking? Is that really what they said? Like hearing, and all of this, to me, it's like the only thing that can't be taken from us is our intuition, and that there's all this energy and all of this. Like I love just coming from such a scientific, like this is total Sag rising, Nathan. Like both of us are Sag rising. It's just like, yeah, let me get in there and figure out what is going on here, because like, yeah, just the disconnection, the fact that there's all of this data, all of these sources of data, and we're ignoring all of the unseen ones. But you trust Wi-Fi, but you trust like satellites, all these things. Why is it so improbable? It's Kiki has said this, like with music, like you trust like ultrasounds and what that tells you. So why is it unfathomable that that sound can actually heal other parts of you. Like, what is so beyond, like, and to me, I say in its own self, like, disbelief is a religion of its own, because are you trying harder to deny this evidence, this overwhelming evidence here, than to just like entertain it and to come at it like empirically? That's just like, like there's something here. Yeah, it's so interesting to me that that there's just like this belief that it's logical, that it's illogical to trust in spirit when it's like the evidence is right there. All the evidence is here. Joy's face.
I'm just like,
Spencer Moon face.
Like media literacy and
Yeah.
the element of intuition and psychic ability into that, I think, is where we're going. And we've talked about this a lot, Siobhan, but I mean, you can clock it. You're just talking like seeing all these AI generated TikToks and Instagram posts, on my Discover page of like,
and that people can't detect
Barack Obama dancing with his shirt off,
so
and they're like, "Oh my god!" I'm like, it's like that's very logical, but like on the level of understanding, like I'm seeing a Keanu Reeves fake account.
You just read my mind.
Yes, where they're like, "Oh my god, Keanu's on TikTok." I'm like, this is not him, y'all. It's very obvious to clock that.
That's what I was just gonna say. Is what has been disappointing me about humanity is like the fake Keanu Reeves, and as people who follow the show know, I fucking love Keanu. So like the fact that people see and they're not clocking it immediately, and also like the fake like. The kind of I swear they're like fetish videos, like, the ones of people making terrible food, and it's like a little housewife that's like, I'm gonna make this recipe, and next thing you know, they're wasting just
the energy is like
tons of food, and people are debating like, I can't believe they're wasting this food. I can't believe white people eat like that. And I'm just looking, and I'm like, y'all, do you not see the engagement farming that people are doing here? Do you not pick up on the fact that like this is serving some kind of kink, whatever it is? I don't know what, but there's some corner that loves watching white suburban moms make terrible food.
People want their minds to be occupied by anything except unpacking their own shit and making their lives better. I have to say that's really what it is. I just feel like people will go in any sort of direction to avoid the most important, things in their life, like probably taking care of their children better, or, I'm sorry, like that's the truth. Like, and like the fact that they hate their jobs, or that they hate their relationships and their friend groups. It's like they will do anything except face what's directly in front of them.
Responsibility for our lives. People will do anything but take responsibility for ourselves.
Totally.
So that was a whole twisting turn of topics.
Yo, no, but it's so,
as we do here.
But it's so true. It's so true though. And especially the fact that we are living in a time of mass awakening. It's not just happening in this country, it's happening all over the people. The earth is ascending, the vibration of the earth is changing, and there is a mass awakening taking place. And I think think about in the past number of years, all of the movements and everything that's happened. And like with what y'all were saying, people are choosing to not go into those places of deconstruction, and people are choosing to stay distracted, because I think in ways that even some of the people that aren't going down the path of deconstruction, and people that aren't committing to the unlearning and the healing processes, I think they're still aware of the reality that it's happening, and they don't want to step into that.
Well, it's the psyche protecting them.
Yeah.
I think that's why it really, like, bringing it back to the choir and this sense of safety. I really, really do believe that people's like disengagement, people's like scrolling for serotonin hits is literally just us all being in survival mode. And it's a hard conscious decision that our relationship with fear, our relationship with failure in a punitive culture, that's like, okay, it's not safe to entertain this, so my mind is gonna divert immediately to the next safest thing, which is like whatever stupid bitch is on reality TV right now. Like, you know, like, okay, this is safe. This is safe. And so I think that really is like, Nathan, your work is creating this, you know, space of safety so that people can just even be regulated to entertain the idea and the curiosity of, where did the song come from? Why are we singing it today? Like, as simple as that in a choir space sometimes. And I'm just like, yeah, like those kind of things, it's never felt safe to be curious. Or yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Yo, and the musical experience of like, wow, I have no experience institutionally or and never taken a lesson, and this person's telling me that I can, one, sing even if I think that my voice is bad or that I don't have access to it, that it's possible with no training, as well as like I will be able to produce, potentially like collaborate with this musician who can like transform these like little ideas that I have, like that into music. Like my dream of like being a musician is like closer and in reach than like than like what this like institution of music has like projected as like being a musician is. Like I think that's what's just so cool and radical about this space. And I so excited because like I think you have the like hype that people need to like feel safe actually to like share their ideas with you. And you just naturally have that. You're naturally just like a very encouraging, thoughtful, open-hearted person that like I trust, you know, giving people like giving opening that up to our community to be like, yeah, like your ideas are safe here, your dreams are safe here, your little voice notes that you download in the morning, right, coming out of bed, are safe with us. Like we're never gonna like make fun of you for like your creativity. And I think that's just like such a gift, and I'm really juiced to see where this goes for the choir. So join the choir, the soft power choir.
Yes.
Mhm.
And thank you for sharing that, Midori. It makes me think of something that Kiki has said over and over and over. Singing is a birthright. And singing in the construct of being a good singer is a colonialist thing in and of itself, one could argue, you know, because the function of singing in indigenous societies was completely different than the Western. This is the performer and this is how it's viewed. And even the concept of like a superstar, you know, like a star performer, that is an invention. That is a construct that was invented within the past couple hundreds of years. If we're focusing on like Western classical types of Western classical like history, like Franz Liszt from like the around like the 1800s, he was like one of the first superstars in the Western classical tradition. Like it's a construct. It's something that's made up. And then you think about how singing and just using the voice has been used as long as humans have been doing ritual, have been conducting and holding ritual, right? You know, it's in those ritual spaces, the ones who might have that might, oh, this is huge, I think. And I think this really connects to soft power choir. While those who might have a beautiful voice or the gift of singing or the gift of music, while those gifts might be recognized in indigenous spaces, and their role in ritual might be the role of playing the drum and keeping the drone going, keeping the trance state going, or using the voice to contribute in that way, it was not viewed and no one else can use their voice because they're not good enough to do it. It was, these are the people who have the gifts. These are their gifts, and everyone is coming together, and you can be your own self, you know. And especially when considering that so many rituals have been held to help people tap into parts of themselves and release things, you know. That so much of that comes through the voice, releasing things through the voice, and allowing people to just do it kind of at free will, as opposed to, this is the time when, like in a Western type of ceremony, this is the time when we sing, and this is what we all sing. From an indigenous ritual based perspective, if people, while things are going on and the drums are being played and the intonations are being sung, if people feel like crying out and singing, they just do it. I think that's one of the biggest differences between indigenous ritual and colonial celebrations or colonial types of ceremonies. Colonial ceremonies and indigenous ritual is that colonial ceremonies are so much more strict in how it's supposed to be done, and there's still the element of control that is involved in these colonialist ceremonies, as opposed to the freedom that people are allowed to have in indigenous based spiritual rituals. And bringing that back to soft power choir, that is something that not just Kiki and I, but y'all as well, because this is y'all's vision too. This is something that we're all fostering together. And it's a way of not just bringing about singing, but bringing about love and community, and creating that space where people can be themselves and feel comfortable, like with what I think you were saying, Midori, feeling comfortable enough to release, to even begin to be able to tap into those spaces that might need healing, having safety and security in that loving space, you know, because like with the realities and these people that are on peoples that are entrenched in this capitalist hellscape that we live in, you know, people don't even have time to go within because they're so distracted and they're so preoccupied with these capitalist colonialist distractions. They can't even begin to be at a place where they can start unpacking those things within themselves.
Yeah, it really just comes down to like ritual or ceremony as the riverbanks to like nourish and create safety for the flow and the creative flow to feel free to express, versus the banks that for control to create some sort of outcome. And I think that's what we're doing differently as a collective, is we create that safe container. We have agreements, we have a structure, and we have clear values. And also we don't hold the expectation of what needs to happen like so rigidly. You know, that's the emergence piece that I think brings it all together. And I think that's what we're embodying. And the choir is, just one of those expressions of that ritual, like what being intentional about and bringing back the ritual and the ceremonial element to the spiritual element, to facilitation and space holding, and just in general in every part of our lives, like ceremonial living, intentional living, ritualized living means, you know.
Yeah, it's truly necessary. And the first call on Monday night, it was so clear how much people have been longing for that space. And I'm just really excited for the future gatherings where we really just sing and just share more and let people be witnessed more, because so many people just want to be witnessed. And I think it's just so genuine, the approach that you bring, and the talent. Like, can we just say, like, just straight up gifted. that scenario where Midori described, like sending off the voice note, everything like that, that really happened. For those who didn't hear the story yet, I just was in my garden last week and I recorded a voice memo where I was humming and singing some words. And for me, who has written a lot of song, just not even written, just recorded a lot of things, just and never come back to it to like bring in that like development, which is that's my growth area now, is like really developing something and completing to completion that feels satisfying. Kiki sent it off to Nathan. Next thing I know, I have a voice note from Nathan that's like, oh my God, like just so affirming and encouraging. And, you know, musically arranged this song. And, you know, it just was so organic the way that it developed. And they were like, can we sing this song in the choir? And I'm like, oh my God, like, when am I even going to write more words? But just trusting, like, I wouldn't have been able to, you know, and I'm still up against that tension of like, oh, should I tell them like, no, let's not talk about it because it's not ready yet. Like, it's not ready. And just releasing that and like feeling like that was me up against fear and letting it happen and just trusting the group of people that I shared it with to hold that. So I just love that. And yeah, just to close this out here, Nathan, like, is there any other way that people can tap in with you offline, online? I know you are going to be doing some music lessons, offerings, and I'll share a little more about Soft Power TV, but let people know how they can connect with you.
Yeah, for sure. I put most of my music ideas and things like that on my TikTok. You can definitely find me there. My TikTok name is frats, FRATZ _CATZ, frats cats. So you can find me there. It's a picture of Goku, Kid Goku, so you can't miss it. That's where I post most of my music regularly. Yeah, that's it. Thank you, Midori. You can also find me on Instagram. I post music on my Instagram, but not as often. That's more of just kind of a more holistic representation of me, but it's _N and then 4, the number 4, THANN, and then another underscore. So that's my Instagram handle. You can find me at. Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you for letting us go deeper into your journey. I learned so much about you today, and even leaving with more questions probably than answers for future conversations. And for everybody watching, we are Soft Power. This is Tapped In, which is our Wednesday show we've been doing since January. But since we've evolved into now offering you all Soft Power TV. So Soft Power TV is this channel. By subscribing to this channel, putting on the notification bells, you are tapped in to Soft Power TV. And this month especially, we are really sharing a lot with the goal of fundraising to help us reach nonprofit status. So we have been coordinating doing online events and spaces for the last 2-ish years, and have since kind of, again, every themes of the whole conversation today, the vision just getting clearer, the roots getting stronger, and us now organizing to really continue to hold space for people to feel safe, to at minimum be themselves, at most develop and share their gifts with the world. And so by staying subscribed, you can support us. By subscribing to our email list, you can energetically support us, as well as in this next week, Midori, myself, and Dr. Kiki are all doing tarot and oracle live streams. So the easiest and most fun way you can support Soft Power right now is by filling out the form to get a donation-based reading. You can use an alias since these are done live. If you've joined our live readings before, you know they're always really fun. You know, we don't hold back no matter the contribution or none that we go in. And this is just a fun way to keep up this thing we've been doing, which are live readings for the last few years, as well as to help us reach this goal. So minimum donation ask is $22. If this is the most accessible way to get a reading with any of us, because we're all professional mystics and tarot readers and Midori's an astrologer. So don't miss out on that opportunity. Share it with some friends. And thank you for supporting Soft Power and hanging in the frequency with us. I'll leave it to Midori to close us out.
Thanks, y'all. Yeah, maybe we'll do a little ring out intuitively. Ooh, Nathan, can you play a little diddle on the piano as an
little
outro?
diddle.
Sure. Can you hear this?
Outro.
Period. Queried. See y'all next time. Thanks for joining.